Welcome to med+Design by Trig, innovation for busy clinicians and physicians. We believe that good design is good for healthcare. And I think you're going to understand more of what we mean by that as Ty goes through the presentation. Overall, med+Design is a 2-module series that we've been working on with UNC Fast Tracks, and we're really excited to be able to share this with the public. And so now I'm going to turn it over to our founder, Ty Hagler, and he's going to take it from here.
Thank you, Jared. And thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just while I'm doing that, huge kudos to Jared, because a lot of the content we've been putting out there, some of the great conversation we've already had, I just appreciate everything you've been doing, Jared. It's been really cool to see how that's coming together. Today, we're kicking off the med+Design program. But in truth, this is something that really began 2 years ago when Andy Kant with UNC Health's Fast Tracks program approached us and said, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we came up with a training program that could really help further innovation in the healthcare space? We went through multiple iterations of this. Our first prototype we went through last year about this time, and then have since done 4 different iterations of this content. Kelly's been the architect of the content as we've been building this out and really putting something together that we're doing design thinking on the process of teaching design thinking and iterating and making sure that it's something that's meaningful and relevant to the most important people to initiating change in healthcare, which is really the clinicians and physicians who are front and center with engaging with the everyday problems in healthcare. So that's what we're here to talk about for today. Real quick, Trig, we're an industrial design consulting firm. We offer insights work in terms of going out and doing qualitative and quantitative customer research to really try to understand what's the foundational challenges in a given space. We then activate those in terms of ideation techniques, which is really a foundation for the med+Design program. And then following those insights, we do a lot of work in just traditional industrial design in terms of physical goods, soft goods to make better products. And also we do a lot of work with brand identity in terms of digital experiences and also putting those foundational elements in place behind startups and corporates. All of that rolls up into that we like to teach as we go so that the clients not only get work output from us, but then also have an enhanced training experience with that so that we learn together as we go through on this journey of innovation. So a quick plug for Trig. I want to start us off with just a framework to help establish the context in which what we're talking about makes sense. The framework was developed by a Welsh thought leader named David Snowden. The name for this is one that's a little hard to pronounce. And if you're struggling to figure out the correct way to pronounce this, it's Cynefin, but which really is Welsh for the place. There's 5 different domains that are established in this framework. The first domain is clarity, or the clear domain, where cause and effect are clearly linked. Think of this as, say, your commute into the office, where it's very clear what needs to happen as you're going along those directions. So you're really thinking about efficiency. And then in a complicated environment, that's where the relationship between cause and effect can still be linked because there's a large volume of data that you can correlate cause and effect and be able to do fail-safe experiments to be data-driven. And that's the complicated environment. But then in the complex environment, there's really no data because we're exploring something that's new. And so the relationship between cause and effect can only be observed in hindsight after you've run the experiment, built the prototype. And that's where safe-fail techniques really win the day. Then the 4th domain is chaos, which we think about the early days after COVID, where we're responding to a crisis, and the worst thing you can do is to not do anything. You need to act one way or another. Otherwise, you're just needing to respond. And whether you're right or wrong, you still just need to move because you're wrong if you stay still. And then the 5th domain really is the center there, which is confusion, where you might think you're in one domain and apply the techniques of one domain, but really you're not correctly applying the correct techniques based on the domain that you're in. And so we've seen that happen very frequently, just relating this to different appropriate tools. So, if it's a well-established process, then routine systems, best practices absolutely make sense. And if you have a complete data set, the total quality improvement movement, continuous improvement as a peak where you're looking at a statistical data set and looking for opportunities for improvement, makes sense as an application. But if you're trying to think through something that's completely novel or deal with complex human behavior with behavioral research, then really design thinking and emergent practices and putting prototypes forward that you can then test is really a much more appropriate domain. So that's really where we're trying to bracket this course so that we can appropriately bound this, that there's certain places where it makes sense to follow this process and other domains where it doesn't make sense. You don't want to be applying a design thinking process on your commute into work. That just doesn't make sense. And so we'll unpack some of that here in a little bit. I wanted to challenge everybody with, we talk about prototyping a lot. And probably the image that comes to mind when you think about a prototype, you might think of additive processes where you might spend thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a prototype that then is a physical, tangible something that has been built up. That's our traditional understanding of what a prototype is, using rapid prototyping additive materials. Actually, fun fact, this image here was generated using Midjourney, which is a artificial intelligence tools. That's a whole rabbit hole. That's a lot of fun to go down. But anyway, it's not a real 3D print. So anyway. So stepping back though of what a prototype really is, a prototype is a safe fail experiment, meaning that you want to put the minimal amount of investment in to learn the lesson that you intend to learn. We're really going through and testing our assumptions of the highest risk aspects of a novel program, a novel idea, with the goal to reduce uncertainty and risk. The example here we have in the background is a storyboard on a new way of moving from Pinterest to Facebook and to then have a physical experience. So storyboarding is just as valid of a prototyping technique as physical prototypes, but it's far less expensive to go through and generate this kind of prototype because you can simulate so many different conceptual ideas to get feedback from end users to make sure that this idea is worth further investment, or if you need to pivot based on a given storyboard. Then further defining design thinking as a methodology. So it's fundamentally a mindset that is derived from principles that I guess everyday product designers, industrial designers do on a regular basis to manage risk and uncertainty. If you look at the image here, Kelly's kindly our hand model here for this one, where we've got the sketches in the background as well as the physical prototype that's being held here. Each of these are prototypes at varying levels of resolution based on the level of confidence that we had at the time during the course of developing this product. It's just a helpful way of envisioning. We learn at various states, and so we're trying to reduce the amount of risk that's involved with each of those lessons along the way. If you think about a model for this, if you think about over the course of time, if your uncertainty is high with a given idea, then you want to cheap, inexpensively, and quickly generate a test, an experiment, to then build confidence as you go and then continue to prototype along that path as you build confidence in the ability to invest further in this concept, in this hypothesis, so that by the time you finally get to something that's operationalized, you've reduced all of the uncertainty and risk, and you've got a fully fledged program that has had lots of experiences with the end users to make sure that it's something that's meaningful and useful for end users. And of course, we're not going to go through all of these different approaches, but I think the point here is there's lots of different ways of prototyping, whether you're in a physical environment or software or services, behavioral research. There's any number of different ways to prototype. Each of these has a different objective in mind and level of certainty as you go through early exploration through to like confirmation before a final commit that this is something we want to commit to a business model. That's at least a conceptual foundation. Now to talk about med+Design, which is, of course, the core program that we've been putting together with UNC's Fast Tracks program. The objective here is to offer the essential first understanding and training for healthcare providers and researchers in the space on a path towards entrepreneurship and introducing positive change into the healthcare system. This comes from a fundamental thesis that we have, is that good design is good for healthcare. Good design practices are good for healthcare, but then also making the experience of interacting with the healthcare system should be something that's thoughtful and well-designed and empathetic for all of the stakeholders. And that's something that I think with the current way we're approaching problems is something that's missing in the healthcare space. And it's something that we really believe that we can make a significant impact by putting forward this fundamental change in how we approach innovation in the healthcare space. So we've been talking a lot about theory and just wanted to express a couple of examples that have come out of these workshops. And so we've got permission to share these images. From our first pass at this, Dr. Nick Piazza and Dr. Rob Lampman formed one of the teams, Team Respiro. They had observed a problem where patients will present at the emergency room with shortness of breath, but then depending on the ER doc who's responding to it, there's multiple possible disease states that could be in play just with that initial symptom. Being able to quickly interpret which of these pathways to go through further testing and treatment was seen as needed. And Kelly did a beautiful job pulling these illustrations together that articulated the core concept that they had, so that they could then go through and validate the market opportunity just based on this prototype. There wasn't an extensive experiment with this. There wasn't like an investment in terms of building out the technology or getting into machine learning in order to be able to interpret the algorithm. All of those technical rabbit holes were illustrated here so that if we build it, is there value in the marketplace, so that we can focus the team on going through and validating this opportunity and seeing if it makes sense to pursue further. Now, ultimately decided to discard this idea. They found other reasons where it wasn't worth pursuing at this point in time, but it was certainly an example of the value of being able to pursue this and be able to prove or disprove a theory about a novel device that could be introduced to the market. Another example, and in this case, so this was a team led by Dr. Jackie Halliday, and then also her collaborators really across the UNC family medicine researchers and physicians, was some work that she did that was informing some research grants. Ultimately, some of the work that she did with the med+Design program led towards her group getting awarded a $5 million grant that recently became public a couple of weeks ago. So it's exciting to see some of the outcomes of this come about. Her team was looking at remote care for patients with high blood pressure and being able to make sure that it's clear and easy to understand what some of the blood pressure monitors could be, but then also to go through and make it so that it's intuitive and easy to use based on some of these tools. The illustrations that came out of the workshop, where we're articulating that there's a complete package that would come in, that there'd be a certain type of blood pressure monitor would come with them, and it'd also be easy to understand instructions and telehealth systems, so that in a complete package that the patient who might be in rural Western North Carolina could be able to receive this bundle and be able to get the care that they need. And Jackie was referencing these images as ones that she was able to put into her grant in response to the NIH to defend the pre-award research that her team had already been doing, which she felt like put them over the edge on getting funding, which of course for researchers, getting this funding is critical to furthering some of this important research and being able to make sure that really patients broadly get the care that they need by advancing some of the standards of care. There's that as an example. So let's talk a little bit more about the workshop itself, which after we've iterated on this a few times, we've realized and come to understand that the cadence and pacing of the workshop needs to be something that fits within clinicians' busy schedules. We've gotten it down to really about 2 hours to 4 hours a week to where you can get through the content material. Kelly and I have done a lot of work to prepare pre-recorded videos so that in about 30 minutes, you can get through the lessons, the weekly content for the week. And then we ask that the teams come together independently to discuss and complete the content. We made it into manageable bite-sized chunks each week so that you're moving your way through the content. One of the aspects then is after you've had a chance to attempt the content, then you'd have an expert coach come in later in the week to challenge the team with better clarity and kind of walk through each of the lessons to make sure that as you're composing a need statement, that it is one that meets the objectives and you're actually making forward progress. Of course, currently, Kelly and I are both coaches for the workshop. We're also talking to additional other coaches. We're building out this program to really make sure there's a guided path. So as you work your way through the content, that we're also coming in and adding a lot of guidance and help as you advance your material. What's interesting, and this is where Kelly and I have been having a bunch of discussions about really pattern recognition. So we've probably put through maybe 15 different teams through this content. And it's been interesting to see the range of problems that get proposed, because the format that we put this in is that we are asking the participants to propose the problems that they feel like are most important. And therefore, we then apply the foundational content to make sure that it matches to what's appropriate for the most salient problem that's facing these teams. Along the way, we've noticed that some of the teams orient towards more device-specific challenges, like Dr. Lampman, and have gone down with Team Respiro, where in that case, there might be a more narrow focus on a specific device. And so we're helping them to broaden out to appreciate more of the stakeholders who might be involved. Whereas other teams have challenges that might not traditionally get considered by the medtech space, which are more what we call clinic improvement challenges, where they're wrestling with broad systemic behavioral research problems that we're having to take a broad problem and then to further define it and break it down into manageable problems that you can then iterate and test along. And so it's been fascinating to see the same content be able to be applied, but the starting assumptions behind the different challenges we face are a little bit different. So it's been just interesting from a pattern recognition standpoint to see how the med design content can apply to a couple of different contexts. So then what we're particularly interested in was what's next. The way the content is set up is we've got our initial 4 to 5 week empathy module where we're challenging teams to fully define what is desirable to the stakeholders, to the healthcare system, to the patients. What is the fundamental problem, and fully define that. Once that problem is fully defined, then with the creativity module, we're then asking the question, how might we? And to generate as many different ideas as we possibly can to then filter down to testable storyboards we might want to pursue. So what's interesting about this is that then potentially goes down different value pathways, that some of which could be traditional medical device startups that follow a well-trodden path. In other cases, it goes back into the healthcare system itself in terms of improving overall care delivery. And then with some of our teams, their foundational assumptions would be completely disruptive to the entire healthcare system and very ambitious, and would be something that are just interesting and that you have to fundamentally rethink how care is delivered in the first place. So each of these pathways are interesting and considered. And the idea here is to build up an ecosystem and a community that can support all of these healthcare innovators as they're trying to improve the total healthcare system. Then just getting more granular about the 2 different modules. The empathy module, depending on if you're more on the care side of the clinic improvement side or the device development side, about 4 to 5 weeks on the empathy module. And then on the creativity module, that's about a 6-week process. With the creativity module, we're pairing in a senior industrial designer with the team to fully illustrate and expand upon some of the ideas, really to bring some kind of creative firepower into the team to really bring some of that expertise into the creativity module. By the end of the workshop, the teams that successfully complete both modules would come out of it with fully testable prototypes that you can then go through and put into grant proposals, or even further get feedback before then going through and trying to get additional grant funding. Then, of course, it's broken down into each week has a specific theme to it. And so you're working through each of those themes and lessons as you're then furthering your way through to reduce uncertainty and risk. The other thing that we just recently launched is the med design landing page. And kudos to the team at Trig, Stephen and Jared, for pulling all that together. There's a lot of hard work to get to that point, but would encourage everyone to go check it out. So the page is at md.trig.com. I'll drop a link here into the chat here in a minute. But as far as the application, Jackie was saying the other day that it's the easiest application that she's ever had to fill out. We ask that you be able to have a clear definition of the problem you're trying to solve, that you be able to recruit a team of 2 to 5 people and be collaborators with you on this. Then as a result of this, to be able to advance some pre-award research programs or a problem that has been bothering you for a while, and to be able to make forward progress on this while you take some of these first steps on a pathway toward becoming a healthcare innovator. So we are recruiting for our next cohort, which we're anticipating to start March 1st, 2023. That's something that we encourage everybody to go through and check out. One more thing. Let's see. So here's the landing page here. And then also just as a quick view on this, because this is something that a lot of our participants have enjoyed, is that we've been using Mural to go through the content, the experience of learning Mural and getting into collaboratively working through the content is something that we've had a couple of people who have become big proponents of the software as they go through it, where you get really good at adding sticky notes and content and everything. So that's another aspect of this.
I was going to add that this is a template that we provide for all the participants, and it's yours to keep. You can continue accessing this page as you continue to test and develop your idea. Your team is welcome to come in and continue getting your hands dirty, moving things around, and refining your ideas.